Okay, so I think we're kicking this final keynote off. I hope everyone had a great day. I'm here with a whole bunch of Citrites who is actually going to be doing maybe the most useful part of this ending of the event. As tradition kind of says, we like to keep it as technical as possible. There's no reason to kind of keep selling Citrix to the crowd who's already kind of committed and passionate and doing a great job for us. But I wanted to start with just a few slides I did bring up in the morning session, which was more focused around the Microsoft Better Together story. And look a little bit ahead. Somebody who saw the Citrix keynote might have realized some of those slides as well. So for the Dublin folks and Wendy and the team, I will let them introduce themselves once we kick them off. And I will now switch to Swedish and take the keynote forward in Swedish, guys. So I hope you excuse me. Okej, så tittar man lite på Citrix, var vi står idag och lite på 2021, så är ju det här fortfarande såklart vägen framåt. Att arbetet inte längre är en plats, att vi har andra typer och sätt att arbeta. Vi var inne lite på det på morgonen, det här med SAS-konversationen och local breakout points, och om det blir endpointen i sig som är breakout point eller om man sitter på ett lokalkontor, så behöver vi såklart förändra hur IT-säkerheten är uppbyggd baserat på den här nya normala, om man nu ska kalla det så. Så det är klart att det här är någonting som också påverkar Citrix, och ni kommer att se Citrix göra mer både annonseringar och investeringar i det området. Även om vi kanske inte kommer att leda just med SaaS och Zero Trust som många av våra leverantörer, eller alla leverantörer i branschen ofta brukar vilja prata om trestaviga eller fyrstaviga akronymer, så handlar det ju såklart om att förändra hur IT levereras baserat på det. Så att säkerhet kommer att komma mer från vår sida, och ni kommer att höra oss mer prata om den typen av fördelar som vi erbjuder verksamheten. Att fortfarande kunna ha möjlighet med hög flexibilitet, vare sig det gäller arbetssätt, arbetslaster eller enheter och så vidare. Och kanske mer specifikt så har vi också sett såklart den här diskussionen kring VPN som, ja, framförallt förra året så var det väl snarare att så snabbt som möjligt helt enkelt bara lösa akuta problem med hur ska jag kunna få min miljö mer nåbar. Och det här sätter ju lite lampan på att det inte längre är liksom VPN som är kanske lösningen. Jag har väl länge hävdat att VPN är en 90-talslösning, lite som jag brukar jämföra med Spice Girls som de såg den här sessionen på nyligen vi körde. Och det har ju såklart med att på den tiden, på 90-talet eller början av 20-talet, så var ju de flesta personerna inne på bolaget, och appar och databaser och allting var inne i bolaget, och då var det ju kanske okej med ett handfull användare externt, medan nu så är det inte samma som var före längre. Så där kommer ni se mer av från Citrix också, att ha ett större grepp kring det här. Vi har ju fortfarande VPN-funktionalitet i vår produkt självklart, för vissa har fortfarande behov av att använda det här, och det är väl okej, men det är just att hela själva säkerhetspositioneringen blir så förändrad när vi helt plötsligt ska släppa upp nätverkstrafik in från enheter som vi sedan behöver bevaka, monitorera, säkra och så vidare, och istället titta på att bara släppa upp access till just vad applikationen kräver eller vad användaren kräver. Vi tror också att vi står lite inför vad vi kallar för inflection point. Dave, våran CEO, pratade om det här på våran kickoff nyligen, att det är klart att vi har ju idag ett stort fokus på molntjänster som vilket annan leverantör som helst, och att även våra tjänster och värdet för verksamheten vill vi helst leverera som en molntjänst. Och det har vi nu lyckats ganska bra med, och det är också anledningen till att jag bad Wendy och Gavin och resten av teamet prata lite om inte minst den här befintliga CVAD-implementationerna som oftast är on-prem, och man kanske inte har riktigt vågat ta steget beroende på olika saker. Om det så är compliance, GDPR, Schrems 2, eller om det är stabilitet eller nätverks internetaccess beroende och så vidare, så utvecklar vi nu lösningar som gör att vi ska försöka mitigera de sakerna som gör att folk kan ta fördelen av att organisera och administrera det via en molntjänst istället för att hålla på att uppdatera massa infrastruktur bara för att få arbetsplatsen fullt fungerande som man vill med Citrix. Så det är ju egentligen något att vi tar hand om lite av den komplexiteten, så att kunder och partner kan fokusera på vad som är unikt för dem. Och det är ju såklart applikationer, data och arbetsplats, inte liksom storefront och DDC:er och databaser och allt det där andra sakerna. Så det är det som är fokuset från vår sida. Vi vill försöka komma vidare från det här med enbart bli assett som ett virtualiseringsbolag självklart och titta mer på att vara en lösning för alla och en arbetsplatslösning för alla på verksamheten. Och även också kunna leverera ADC-funktionalitet som en molntjänst. För det går lite hand i hand med att vi flyttar mycket av infrastrukturen till molnet, så vill vi också kunna flytta den typen av avancerad ADC-funktionalitet också som molntjänst. Så det är ju vårt mål eftersom vi också ser att vi kan leverera mer värde för kunden. Vi kan framförallt leverera snabbare såklart än vad vi kan när vi har installerat on-prem. Med det sagt ska jag också säga att det finns ju fortfarande utveckling för lösningar att köras i egna datacenter. Det finns många kunder som har investerat i hårdvara och lösningar och vill ha det av andra anledningar on-prem och inte i cloud, och det ska vi såklart fortsätta med. Så att, det här är ju såklart parallella spår, men vi ser ju själva att man får mest värde för pengarna genom att vi kan hantera lite av infrastrukturen så att man får fokusera mer på vad det är som är unikt för kunden. Så självklart kan ju själva arbetslasterna vara kvar on-prem även om man går in i en cloud-lösning. En annan sak är också det här med arbetsplats eller workspace som vi säger. Vi har ju pratat väldigt mycket om Citrix workspace och sagt att det är där som informationen landar för användarna, och den har väl i sin tur i alla fall haft två olika sätt att se ut på. Dels den här första versionen som egentligen var en samling av applikationer där man tvingades ta någon och starta sessioner, och sen så tittar vi på mikroappar och det var mycket fokus på arbetsprocesser under 2019 framförallt tills vi lanserade den. Och det är något vi kommer att fortsätta att investera i. Vi tror själva att arbetsplatsen är någonting som anpassar sig efter mig som person och ska förekomma och vara intelligent. Och ni kommer att se mer av det här också, men vi kommer också kanske se att det inte behöver vara just Citrix workspace, utan vi kommer att se integration där vi till exempel integrerar i Microsoft Teams, eller vi har sett lite annonseringar från Microsoft senaste dagarna med liknande lösningar för en mer anpassningsbar och intelligent arbetsplats. Där vi kan antingen integrera med applikationer eller arbetsflöden eller mikroappar och på det viset. Så att den här workspace-konceptet är inte bara att det ska in i Citrix workspace, utan vi ska försöka få även integrera med andra typer av arbetsplatslösningar. För vi tror väldigt starkt på att det är rätta vägen att gå. Och inte minst kommer vi göra det, eller som visar på det lite, i det här uppköpet av Rike som några av er kanske har sett. Ett bolag som kanske på ytan påminner lite om Podio, även om Rike har en mer etablerad lösning, mer färdigbyggd lösning kan man väl säga. Så handlar det ju såklart om en SaaS-leverantör inom både arbetsplats men framförallt workflow och collaboration. Lösning som har funnits ett antal år. Det är en slags kombination av work, write och like. Blev Rike, California-baserat. Funnits både på stora och små kunder. Och ni kommer kanske inte se så mycket av det här under första halvåret. Kanske till och med inte så mycket heller under andra halvåret. Vi får se lite hur det här kommer ut. Men självklart är ju målet att vi ska integrera de här plattformarna. Och Rike kommer att komma med en hel del färdiggjorda både templates och arbetsflöden som vi tror kommer vara intressant. Både för strukturerat arbete som liksom anpassat då att man skriver arbetsflöden för vissa användare. Men också för mer informella arbetsflöden där man själv som användare av olika slag behöver sätta upp en arbetsgrupp och ta fram lite arbetsflöden på ett enkelt sätt. Så tror vi att, eller i alla fall jag har sett lite på Rike, verkar som att det är en rätt anpassningsbart också utifrån användarens eget perspektiv. Där kanske mikroapparna mer är liksom färdiggjorda av IT och levereras till användarna. Men mer om det här lite senare. Jag vill bara sätta scenen lite så att man går lite från det här any user, any location, any device, any application, så kommer man också se lite mer any work type. Det är väl lite det som är själva liksom, storyn då. Och med det sagt så skulle jag vilja lämna över till Wendy, switching to English.
Hi Peter, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. Thanks for joining.
No problem.
So Wendy, I did ask you guys to talk on a very specific thing as a keynote, and the reason is obviously because we have a great focus on moving people to cloud, and especially some of the folks who have had on-prem implementations maybe have been a bit cautious about it, depending on some of the dependencies to internet and to the cloud service and so forth. So kick it away, and please enlighten us.
No problem at all. Gavin's just going to share his screen now. So we have our deck up and running. Apologies for a little bit late. Here we go.
Just in the process of sharing that out now.
No problem.
You got a whole team there, Wendy.
I was just going to say, meet the team. This is
thank you for.
This is the technologist team. So thank you for the introduction, Peter, and thanks for joining our session today on service continuity. You're joined today by, as you can see, the technologist team. My name is Wendy Gay. I'm a senior manager in pre-sales and Citrix in EMEA, and I'm joined today by Gavin Connolly.
Hi everybody, how are you doing? My name is Gavin Connolly. I am pre-sales engineering specialist based in the Citrix Dublin office, or at least I was before all this madness. I've been working with Citrix for 4 years now, and I'm really happy and excited to be here to talk to you guys about service continuity today. I'm also joined here by my good friend Ben.
Hi everybody, my name is Benjamin Gottfried. I'm also a technologist with Citrix since last year, but before that I started in technical support, where I used to work for another 2 years, and I hand over to Danilo.
Hi, so my name is Danilo. I've been in Citrix for 1 year. I'm also on the technologist pre-sales engineer team, and I have a background in hardware, enterprise level hardware in Dell. So maybe Keith.
That leaves Keith.
Last. Hi everyone. My name is Keith Skinner. I'm about 5.5 years in Citrix. Started off in tech support for content collaboration, endpoint management, and seen the chance to move from tech support into the technologist team last year, and joined the technologist team.
So
brilliant.
Yeah, lots of experience on this call. So today we wanted to talk about why do we need service continuity? So why do we need this new service? We also want to spend a little bit of time recapping on what local host cache is. And I know anyone who has an on-prem CVAD deployment will know local host cache really well. And if you're my age, you'll go way, way back to DS Maint and LMH, which is a little bit further down the road. We also then want to talk about some of the requirements that are there for the new service. So what versions of EDA do you need? What versions of Workspace app do you need? And how do you get access to it? We want to spend a little bit of time talking about how service continuity works. So how does this new tech preview work, and how does that service work? And I think it's always a good idea to do a customer demo and an end user demo. So we want to show you exactly how this works as well. We want to talk about some of the limitations and touch on the roadmap items for this tool, as it's a brand new service. And then finally, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the auto config tool, which is a tool to help you migrate from on-prem to cloud as well. Thanks, Gavin. Yeah, brilliant. So why do we need service continuity? So when you think about Citrix applications are used for business critical applications. They need to be up 24/7. They're generally enterprise applications that are required 24/7. So right now, if a customer wants to make use of Citrix Workspace, they cannot do it and utilize localhost cache at the same time. They have to drop down and they have to put the access layer on-prem, which means they have to put the ADC on-prem and the storefront on-prem and make use of localhost cache. With our service continuity tech preview, we want to provide resiliency to customers during workspace outages. We want to make sure you have resiliency for the identity service, the workspace portal, Cloud DC, and ticketing services. And we want to do this by using multi-use files. And we're going to go into a lot of detail in this session about this. We want to use these multi-use connection leases for workspace. And these are going to be stored on the endpoint of the connection. And they're going to cache the entire list of applications and desktops that user has access to. This is going to allow us to avoid this poor experience during times of outage. So we've all been there where we've logged into the workspace and you get a message that says you do not have any applications available. We're going to show you today as part of this session how that experience is going to change for our end users. So I'm going to hand over to Ben now, who's going to talk about localhost cache, give us a recap on localhost cache and a reminder of how it works. Cheers, Ben.
Thanks, Wendy. Well, one of the most asked questions I receive from customers who are considering moving to cloud is what happens when the connection to the cloud is gone and whether the user are still able to connect and work without interruption. Well, that's actually the fantastic benefit and feature of a local host cache I would like to present to you. What it does is that with the local host cache, users who are connecting when an outage occurs can continue working uninterrupted, and reconnections and new connections experience minimal connection delays. But let's see how it works. We concentrate on the left side. We have the local host cache during normal operations, starting with the user 1. User 1 connects to the storefront. The brokering principal accepts the connection request from the storefront and communicates with the VDAs and checks if they're registered or not. The CSS service checks with the broker to see if any configuration changes were made, such as, let's say, changes in delivery group property or system actions such as machine assignments, for example. If a configuration change occurred since the previous check, the CSS synchronizes and copies information to the secondary broker, also called high availability service. Good to know is that all configuration data is copied, not just items that changed since the previous check. The CSS imports the configuration data into an SQL server, local DB database. This database is referred to as the local host cache database. The CSS ensures that the information in the local host cache database matches the information in the site database. The local host cache database is recreated each time synchronization occurs. If no changes occurred since the last check, the configuration data is not copied. Let's focus on the right side. There we can see the local host cache brokered connection with an outage. Because now it's getting interesting, we see what the local host cache is capable of and what the benefits are. Starting with user 1. User 1 connects to the storefront, and the secondary broker starts listening for a processing connection request. While the secondary broker is handling connections, the brokering principal, so the first one, continues to monitor the connection to the Citrix cloud. When the connection is restored, the brokering principal instructs the secondary broker to stop listening for connection information, and brokering principal resumes brokering operations. The next time a VDA communicates with the brokering principal, so the first one, a registration process is triggered, and the secondary brokering removes any remaining VDA registrations from the previous outage. The CSS resumes synchronizing information when it learns that configuration changes have occurred in Citrix Cloud. Let's say in the unlikely event that an outage begins during synchronization, the current import is discarded and the last known configuration is used. The event log indicates always when synchronization and outages occur. There's actually no time limit imposed for operation in outage modes. Let's see it from another angle. Next slide. Yeah, here a little bit more simple. We have the workspace app, so the user connects to the workspace app and establish the connection to the storefront. And from the storefront, it connects to the high availability server, so the local host cache broker, which connects the VDAs. How nice this function is, it has some limitations. Let's talk shortly about a few. Workspace is not supported, means that you need a storefront on-prem in order to use it. The local host cache operates per resource location, what could result in complex storefront configuration, and if you need multiple resource locations. We see that it loses the ability to power manage VDAs, except of Citrix Hypervisor and VM vSphere. That's what I actually wanted to show you regarding the local host cache and why service continuity is so important. My colleague, Gavin Connolly, will continue with the deep dive into that now. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ben. And thanks, everybody. Yeah, so really interesting, the local host cache obviously playing an important part. And, you know, if we just go back, that storefront, if you see, is still in the picture here. So customers would still need to have that storefront on premise. You know, they're still in charge of the management, the maintenance, the updates, all that kind of thing. But with the new service continuity now, we allow to remove that piece and move that up into the cloud for Citrix to manage. So let's kind of take a deep dive in and see how it works, what it looks like, and what it means for our customers. So, the potential failure points of the Citrix Cloud service, if for any reason the Citrix Cloud service itself was down, or if the brokering service that sits up in that control plane was unavailable or unreachable, or if the gateway service for somehow managed to be down. Now, the gateway service has many points of presence that we'll talk about in a moment, but if in the unlikely chance that that was down, we can still make connections. And then the internet connectivity, if one day we all get to go back to that office and that shared work environment again, and that branch office might have network connection issues and it can't reach out to the internet, cannot reach out to the control plane, once the user on the endpoint still has layer 3 network connectivity to those VDAs, we can still connect. So it's really a powerful improvement. So what is service continuity? Let's explain and break it down into the 3 different functionality improvements that's here that bolsters the user experience. So the first one, Wendy already mentioned it at the top of the call, is this new ICA file type called a connection lease. So these connection leases are authorizations. They authorize connections to either directly or via the gateway service, even if the cloud is in an outage mode, to those VDAs. And they're bound to a specific user and the device. So I can take my connection lease and send it across to Danilo, and he can send his across to me, and we connect to each other's resources. They're bound specifically to that user and that device. And they're also signed and encrypted, making them really secure. And these are so much improved, these will eventually become the new standard for ICA files. Right now, for now, they're a fallback mode if the ICA file cannot make that connection, cannot make that brokering, but eventually they will become the new normal of brokering connections within Citrix. And the great thing about these connection leases is the engineering team have laid the groundwork so that these can eventually be used with other services and other resource types. So today we're primarily focused on our virtual apps and desktop service, but eventually they will also be able to be used with web and SaaS, or mobile apps with our CEM, or even files with our Citrix Endpoint Management or Citrix Files Content Collaboration. We've also made improvements to and created this new progressive web app. And what that means is that's the caching of the Citrix Workspace app user interface. So that means that we now have an offline mode for the Citrix Workspace. So if for some reason that user launches the Workspace app on their Windows machine, and that Workspace app cannot reach out to the internet to pull down the user interface, we now are caching some of that as a progressive web app. It uses the CF# framework to load that engine, and will even allow browser-based access even when there's no internet. So again, the connection lease is kind of that caching of the connection and that dynamic information that we need to launch and make connections to the resources. The progressive web app is more around the user interface and the Workspace app itself, and being able to still display that when we can't get out to that internet, to that control plane. We also are increasing the gateway points of presence across the globe. And, it's great. I've really seen it a lot over the last year. Citrix have added a number of different points of presence globally. And by increasing these, it means that the gateway service becomes even more reliable. It has built-in high availability and a multi-cloud presence. So we really want our Citrix customers to be always able to reach that gateway service, no matter where they are globally. So let's talk a bit more about those connection leases. So first of all, they're long-lived authorization tokens. They are based on 3 concatenated files that are stored in the user's local app data, and I'll show you that in a few moments. They're broken down into a metadata file, a common parameters file, and resource location file. And all 3 of those are basically the information that we need to establish those connections if the control plane is down. So the connection leases are programmable to be valid between 1 and 30 days, and Keith's going to talk a bit more about that in a few moments, but they're 7 days by default, so it's really useful. They can be 7 days. Once the user logs in within those 7 days, he can do a call to home. Once he or she is logged into the Workspace, it then pulls down fresh connection leases and renews that lease and that trust with the control plane. And the great thing is that these cannot be edited or changed, so that protects from bad actors. So there's checks and balances every time a connection is established to make sure that this is the original file that was pulled down from the control plane and synced with the issuing service in that control plane. So this will store the unique authorization files to reach those resources. So it's a really interesting new technology from Citrix. Talking then again about that progressive web app. So again, it's that caching of the user interface. So it's built up of many components, and what it allows us to do is the application using a service worker is able to reach out and try to reach the control plane and pull down the user interface. If it can't reach that user interface out in the control plane, it then just looks to its cache that's installed locally and is still able to populate those resources, enumerate the resources, give the look and feel of that new workspace. So again, that's really important. And the great thing is, again, the engineers have gone and laid the groundwork for other services. So there's a per feed in-app cache. So that allows us to take a feed from each of the services that we have there that you can see listed and consolidate them into and aggregate those resources into the workspace platform. So this kind of isolates them down into silos to allow us to do more caching and do a per feed health status. So, it breaks it down. It means that, we can see individually what services are available, what services we're able to reach from. So it's really bolstering the experience of that workspace application. So this is a very busy slide, and I know you guys have probably had a long day, but I'm going to try and break it down nice and simply and help you really understand what Citrix connection leases are and how service continuity works together, okay? So if we start off in the bottom left corner, let me just get my mouse here, okay? So this is the endpoint device and the workspace app down here, okay? So we'll first talk about doing the connection lease sync down, okay? So the endpoint device reaches out to the Citrix workspace. So that's the cloud-based storefront, and that's where all the latest and greatest features are being released, and it's why we think that a lot of our customers will really benefit by moving away from their on-prem storefront and using this cloud-based storefront, that Citrix workspace experience, okay? And what we do is we enumerate the published resources from that workspace storefront. Sorry, I've just lost my mouse. So that Citrix workspace experience in the cloud talks to the connection lease issuing service, okay? The connection lease issuing service then talks to the connection lease service and the cloud broker, and they will generate a connection lease. They'll do that by talking to the root of trust, okay, which establishes that trust. It's almost like a PKI. It's similar to how a PKI security model works. So it establishes a root of trust. The broker then populates those connection leases with the information needed, i.e. the connectors, the gateway, the gateway service addresses and things like that. And that populates and passes back down with this step number 5 here, all the way back down to the sync engine in the workspace app. So again, we've gone up from the endpoint device, we've talked to basically the service up here, and we've synced down these new connection lease files. So again, it's 3 files per resource. So if you have a desktop, it's going to be 3 files for the desktop. If it's an application, you'll have 3 files for that application, okay? And they sync down to the service, down to the workspace app, should I say. So then when we talk about then actually launching a resource and making that connection to the VDA, okay, we're on step 6 now, okay? So the workspace app reaches out either directly if you have direct connection configured or enabled, or via the gateway service if you're coming externally, or you have that configured to always come through the gateway, okay? So that passes either through the gateway or directly to the connector. So it's using this line here or this line down here, okay? And both of those communications use a brand new protocol created by Citrix Engineering called the Connection Lease Mutual Exchange and Trust Protocol, okay? The Connection Lease Exchange and Mutual Trust Protocol. It's a long one. And so once that connection is established to the connector, that resolves the credentials from the from the auth T, and then we try to make a connection to the cloud broker. Okay, so if the cloud broker is still available and talking to us, then we can start the preparation step with the VDA. So the cloud broker talks to that VDA and says, hey, let's get ready, start all the listeners and all the services and get ready to launch. Okay, that then talks back to the connector here, to this service, and it talks back to this CLX MTP host and comes back through that gateway, creating a GCT or an STA ticket, and talks back down to the endpoint device. That then, the endpoint device then creates, if you see step 12, it's pointing down here, that creates your ICA file, okay, or that connection lease, okay? And that then, once we have that established, then we then are all green and we either make our connection through the gateway service down to the VDA or directly, if we have those direct connections down to the VDA. So I hope that's clear. I hope that breaks it down. There's a lot going on there, but hopefully we've broken it down. There's one more instance where something different happens, okay? And this goes back to what Ben was talking about with localhost cache. If for some reason the whole workspace is unreachable and we cannot reach out to that cloud broker that sits in the cloud, okay? We go on to the next step. Okay, and this, we're not able to reach out to that cloud broker, okay? So we missed that step. We then go ahead and we, instead of going to step 8 then comes down here, and we fall back to the local host cache service that's built into the cloud connectors already. And Keith's going to talk a bit about what we need for that. And that talks to the local DB that's on those cloud connectors. So we're able to resolve those VDAs and all those addresses that's needed as it's built into the local host cache. So instead of then going up to the broker and down to the VDA, we now use this local host cache broker service and local DB built into the connector to pass that connection to the VDA. And all the rest of the connection is the same, but again, it's if we can't reach out to the cloud broker, we still fall back to localhost cache that's built into this connector code. So we're still, using that functionality and that technology in a way. And then again, once that all passes back through the gateway and the connection is still established as normal with those HDX connections. So again, that's just one little variant, again, if we think we can't get out to the whole control plane. So again, lots in there, lots in that slide for one of the last sessions, but I hope I was able to break it down clearly and explain to you how this all hangs together and is possible. And for now, I'm going to then pass over to Keith, who's going to tell us exactly what we need to get that set up in your environment.
Perfect. Thanks, Gavin. So in terms of service continuity, this feature can be enabled upon request, and a feature flag will be set on your account, which will mean then you'll be able to see the setting and be able to turn it on or off. And we'll have a look at where that setting sits in the next few slides. So service continuity will be a site-wide feature, which means when it is enabled, it'll be enabled for the entire site, and it'll be set for all resource locations within that site. So it's important to note. Service continuity is a CVAD service specifically designed for the workspace experience. Now, with localhost cache that Ben just talked on, you need to keep and consume that on-premise storefront to make use of the localhost cache. But now with service continuity, you'll only need to consume the cloud services. So the requirement is to use the CVAD service with the workspace experience. It's important to note as well that this won't work with site aggregation. So for anyone who's not aware, site aggregation is used, for example, when you want to publish apps and desktops from an on-prem site into the workspace of a CVAD service site. So just to mention that service continuity won't work with site aggregation. In terms of the requirements, so from the resource or the workload side of things, the VDA needs to be at a minimum of 715 or above. So LTSR or current release, and as always, have an up-to-date Citrix cloud connector or cloud connectors in place. Cloud connectors auto update, so as long as you're not offline for extended periods of time, you should be fine. Obviously, the VDAs themselves should be online for this to work. And then we kind of move down to the client side, ensure that Workspace 2012 or higher is being used prior to the outage. So keeping up to with the Workspace client app, allows for the newest features. But the main point here is just making sure that they're connected using Workspace 2012 or higher prior to that outage. So if we move to the next slide. So from the connection side, at this time, there's no support for traditional on-prem gateways, but we have support for the gateway service, which is essentially plug and play, meaning that there's no major config needed for this. And you can make it reachable for external and internal users or internal users exclusively. So the caveat there would be the Workspace app needs to be able to reach the connector and the VDA over ports 2598. So again, just to mention here, this is working with the gateway service exclusively. So where can you see this feature? Where can you expect to see it? And the image here shows where this feature and its settings. And you might notice this is where you configure the other Workspace settings, such as Workspace URL, the identity provider for authentication, service integration, and so forth. At the end of this list is where you're going to see the service continuity settings. Within the settings, connection leasing can be enabled or disabled, and additionally, you'll be able to configure how long the connection leases will be valid for. And Gavin talked on connection leases earlier, so you'll be able to set the validity between 1 and 30 days from this location. Just to point out as well here, and this kind of goes back to size requirements of the cloud connector. So as it mentions here, or does it mention here now? No, maybe remove that bit. But just to mention, it's 4 virtual CPUs and 4 gig of RAM for the cloud connectors. So service continuity, like its predecessor, localhost cache, is going to make use of the cloud connectors technology and the localhost cache broker service. So you'll want to size up the cloud connectors for performance and resilience with service continuity in event of an outage. And we've added links here so you can review them later. So we've looked at the GUI. Now, what about PowerShell? So for any PowerShell fans on the session, we haven't forgot about you guys. As well as the Cloud Portal UI, you can leverage PowerShell to view and change the configurations on the service continuity and connection leases. You have the ability to drop into PowerShell and see what's under the hood here. So let's talk a bit about what you need here, the requirement side of things. So interacting with service continuity through PowerShell requires the latest version of the PowerShell SDK. And that can be found at the link just mentioned here on this slide. The basic steps are that you're going to download the SDK, double click to run the SDK, open PowerShell, add a snap in, authenticate, and at this point, as an example, what you can do is use the get broker site command to see the existing configuration, or use the set broker site against any of the parameters for the service continuity. I'm going to talk through, I'm just going to show you a bit of a demo on the get broker site and see what parameters are returned, and then Gavin's going to have a little look at the set broker site to demonstrate how to change this. So I'm just going to figure out how to share my screen real quick, and let me see. I'm not sure what's being shared, guys. Can anyone tell me if you can see my screen?
Not yet. Not yet. Keith?
It's the one beside the microphone on the left-hand side. It's the third icon down to share the screen.
Yeah.
Got it there, and it's just telling me happy screen sharing. So do you have to unshare, Gavin, or does someone have to give me control to?
Yeah, Gavin might need to unshare for a sec.
Yeah. Cool. Try that now there, Keith.
Okay, let me try one more time. Aha. So share the screen. And hopefully now you can see.
There we go.
My screen.
Yeah, we're in action.
Brilliant, brilliant. So as you can see, I downloaded the SDK. I double click and run on the SDK. And then from PowerShell, what I'm going to do is run this command, the ASNP space citrix.star. It's going to add the snap in for me. Pull in the SDK parameters. So the next thing I will do is authenticate against my site. So I want to get, I don't know if you've seen that, but it's get XD authentication. And you hopefully can see this pop-up screen that came up asking to enter my credentials. Obviously, Citrix Cloud is fronted with multi-factor authentication, So I'm just going to open my phone, grab my Authenticator app, and throw in the password. Here we go. And so I'm actually an admin on multiple different sites, so I'm just going to select the tenant that I want to access. And at this point we're in. So we've downloaded the SDK, ran the SDK, opened PowerShell, added the snap in, authenticated against the correct tenant. And as promised, I'm going to run the get broker site, and we'll have a look at some of the things that are returned here. So I'll just go up to the top and I'll look at the first one. So bypass auth for credential or for cached resources. So the default of this is true, and when it's set to false, the user cannot access cached resources unless they authenticate. Another one I'll point out is the delete resource leases log off. This is enabled by default. So what it means is when a user explicitly logs off from the workspace, the leases will be wiped from the device. So an explicit log off is different than just exiting the app. But if they explicitly log off, the leases are wiped from the device. Another one to point out would be the DNS resolution enabled. This must be set to false in order for resource leasing to work successfully. Then resource, there's another one I want to point out, maybe two more that I'll just point out before I hand back to Gavin. It's a resource leasing enabled. Did I just actually, where is that one?
Yeah, it's just down below there, Keith. Yeah, I see it. Resource leasing enabled. So that's the most important one. So that's the one that's going to say whether or not that's on for your site. So again, we can turn it on in the GUI, or as you said, you can turn it on in PowerShell there.
Excellent. And just above that, just to be the last one I'll point out, is the resource lease validity period in days. So again, as Gavin mentioned, this is one of the settings that can be configured in the GUI with that 1 to 30 days kind of thing. So we can set it here as well. So the Get Broker site is going to pull these down, and you can have a look through to see what kind of is returned here on this. And I'm going to pass back over to Gavin, so I'm going to relinquish the screen. Hopefully this works.
Perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much, Keith. So
thanks, Gavin.
Great stuff, great info there. So there was a good question in the chat from Jesper, and he asked, with localhost cache work for the user, I'm guessing Jesper you mean service continuity work to a user that's not connected to the workspace whatsoever. And the answer is we do need that user to establish a connection with the workspace at least one time. And the reason for that is they need to consume those connection leases. So when a user logs in to the workspace, every so often it will do a call to home to that control plane and will sync down those connection leases. Okay, so once those connection leases then are synced down to the user's machine, then it depends on when the connection, how long the connection leases are valid for. So again, it's just to get those connection leases initially, the user would have had to log on to the workspace. But again, if they haven't logged on in 30 days, that doesn't matter because they have that 30-day connection lease on there if it was set to that. And then they can go and connect for 30 days, and it's only after those connection leases expire after 30 days that then it becomes an issue, or then it becomes they need to refresh, authenticate to workspace again, pull those connection leases. And obviously then that questions kind of security then. Well, what's the best? Is it 1 day? Is it 30 days? Is it 7 days is the default? But again, it will depend on your own use case. And what I have here is Keith kind of showed the Get Broker site, but what I can show you there is the Set Broker site. So what we can do is a Set Broker site call. Can you guys see the PowerShell on the screen there now? Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger just so that everybody can see.
Yeah, I think a little bit bigger would be good.
Yeah.
A bit bigger again if you can.
Yeah, let's see, can I?
If you right click up the top, Gavin, you can do the properties. Yeah, and then go to the font size and you'll be able to increase that. I had 28 on mine.
Perfect. Oh, I go to modify.
Not to worry.
Something like that.
No,
Oh,
oh, there we
that's
go.
good.
Perfect.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So what we can do is we can do a set broker site here, and that's where we can change some of these settings that Keith mentioned again. So we can do things like we can change this. So as you mentioned there, just for how long are they valid for? So we can set that to back down to 2 days. Okay, we don't want people to be able to have a connection needs for more than 2 days. We want them to log into the workspace every so often, or maybe we want it all the way up at the 30 days. Again, we can bypass the auth for cached resources. So that allows us to not have to authenticate, or we can fix it as that's false so that an authentication has to happen for those. Now, that becomes an issue if the workspace authentication service was down or unreachable. So again, it depends on your own use case whether or not you want that to be true. Likewise, the delete resource on log off. So you can turn that off so that those resources, those leases, never expire until the period is up. So logging off doesn't expire them. But again, we like that feature to be on. We have it on our lab so that wipes it from that device. And again, remember what I said before, that they're specific to the user and the device. So if I set that there now, and what we should be able to see in Citrix Cloud, let me just see this now. If I pull the Citrix Cloud, sorry, I have lots of screens around me. Some of them are to the side of me here, but if I go to my Workspace app now, if I go to the workspace configuration, should I say, inside the Citrix Cloud admin user interface, under that service continuity section that Keith mentioned, we should see that updated to 30 if it's working correctly. Oh, okay.
Probably just take a minute.
Error token. I think I need to auth again. Auth really quickly. We do have extra secure multi-factor turned on here, so we just need to add that in as well.
Can't get away from that now, Gavin.
No, definitely not. There's no escaping it. So we just, as Keith mentioned before, you just make sure that the correct tenant is selected, and then we should be able to run that. So again, setting it for 30 days. See if that goes through. Perfect, it's gone through.
Thanks.
And if we go back to the to here, we might just need to refresh the page. Back onto service continuity, and now it's 30. So we've updated it there. So again, we can update it here in the GUI, and it's simple. But for some of those other more complex settings, they're in PowerShell for now. So I hope that answered your question, Jesper, and I hope that makes it clear for everybody. Conscious of time, I'm just going to speed along here back into the deck. The other kind of thing to be conscious of with security is we do also have the ability to revoke and block those connection leases, which of course is important. So if a bad actor goes, the laptop gets lost or stolen, we do have the ability to block connection leases for a specific user or a specific device, and we can pull the name and list of that revocation period, and we can get all the details of that there. So let's very quickly look at the end user demo. Okay, so as Wendy mentioned before, today we have this bad experience. We want to give a better experience where we can still enumerate the site. Now, when service continuity kicks in and we fall back to the connection leases, the Workspace app is able to adapt and tell us that. So it will say unable to connect to some of your resources. Some virtual apps and desktops may still be available. So some virtual apps and desktops might not be available if the resource is down or off, and some web and SaaS applications will be grayed out because they're not currently included in this tech preview that's available. So conscious of the time, I do have a quick video just to show you guys of how this hangs together. I'll just make sure that is playing.
We lost you, Gavin.
To simulate an outage, to simulate that outage mode, we're going to turn off that workspace URL. So there we see service continuity is available and it's valid for 7 days connection leases. So we'll go back, we'll turn off that workspace URL to simulate that cloud outage or that internet connectivity outage. So once that's turned off, it'll take a few seconds, and then we'll flip back over to the workspace, and we should see now the bar will generate the warning bar that we're in service continuity mode. So that bar at the top signals that, but we're still able to launch and connect to our desktop. Now, what you will notice here is that I've authenticated with Active Directory, and normally this would single sign me on all the way through. We are prompted for a second prompt for now. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But once I enter my Active Directory credentials again into the resource, then we're able to launch our application or desktop, whatever resource, as normal. And those connection leases are found in the local app data of the user. So we can see that there, it's under my domain and my user. We have leases, and you can see those lease files. So this is available. Service Continuity has a public tech preview that went live in the last month or so. You can sign up to that, and I would really encourage you to do that. If you have any sort of cloud environment that you can play around with, it's really good. And until you kind of get hands-on with it, I think it's not always clear how really cool it is. I really recommend that.
Yeah.
So
I've also put the Podio in the chat, Gavin, too, for everybody.
Perfect. That's great. So just a couple of final checks on that. So for now, the authentication methods that we support with this tech preview are AD and Citrix one-time passcode and the gateway. Other authentication methods are coming soon on the roadmap. And then today, the tech preview works with the Citrix app for Windows, so the native Windows Citrix Workspace application, that client. Other clients will be supported as we go through the roadmap. Also then, single sign-on and federated authentication service, or FAS, will eventually be supported as well as we go further into this product's release. And one thing to note is that Azure AD machines and locally mapped accounts, i.e. non-domain joined machines, are not currently supported. And also, we always need to make sure that the cloud connectors and VDAs are available. That includes if they sit in a public cloud, and we always need to have that layer 3 network access to those VDA machines. So that was just a very quick dive into service continuity. I think it's a really game-changing feature and functionality for the workspace. But now I'm going to hand over to both Wendy and Danilo, who are going to talk you through the new migration functionality that we have with Citrix.
All right, thank you, Gavin. So we'll talk a little bit about the auto configuration tool. So what is it? It is a tool which can help you to migrate a on-prem environment, CVET environment, cloud, or to migrate your environment from one cloud platform to another. So why do we need a migration tool for this? And how does it work? So we're going to go over that. So if we can go to the next slide. Go to the next slide, please. Oh.
I think we may have dropped. Gavin may have lost connection there. Is it? Or
yeah,
did we
I
lose
think
Gavin from the meeting? Did we?
Let me see where he is.
Sorry, guys. I think I just had a bit of network lag there. Let me just share that screen for you.
No problem. That happened to me a minute ago.
All right. No problem at all. If you can go to the next slide, please, Gavin. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
So, yes. So we have had migration tools for a while before, since the 6.x versions. But migrations have evolved now. It's now all about on-prem migration to clouds, migrations within a hybrid cloud environment. And using a good tool to migrate this makes it a lot faster So in the past, maybe you would have had to use a third-party vendor tool or even write a own custom tool in order to facilitate migration. And maybe it wasn't always possible to migrate in steps. So for example, you want to migrate users using certain VDAs first. So this is all possible with using the auto configuration tool. So in the next slide, we're just going to delve a little bit deeper into that. So yeah, so if you can click on those, thank you. So the first reason to use the auto configuration tool is obviously automation. It configures all the policies that you've set in your on-prem environments, allowing you to migrate that to your cloud environments. And second of all, you can have full control over all the policy settings, all the configurations, and it's customizable, so you can do a migration in stages. And go to the next slide. We'll show a very simple scheme of how it works. So basically, you begin at the left here with your CVET on-premises sites. So and these all have their own configurations, settings, and policies. So if you have, for example, plans to go to a new cloud site, which you see on the right, so you need to migrate that. So using the auto configuration tool, we need to get the settings and policies from the left side to the right side. So we use a commandlet, which is called which exports the configurations into a certain data file. It's called a YAML file. And this is a file similar to XML, but it's a bit easier to edit. So even if the output, for whatever reason, you need to change something in there, you can also do that after the fact. So then after you have all your information in this file, you simply need to push it out to the new cloud sites. Which uses merge CVET auto configuration to sites. And you can also repeat this process across multiple sites. So now in the next slide, we'll just look a bit about a cloud to cloud migration. So for example, if you have your source cloud site, you want to move this to another cloud site, you can do this in a way very similar to on-prem to cloud migration. So basically, it's almost the same. So you generate this YAML file, which has all the settings, policies, everything in it, and this is then pushed out to the new cloud sites. Okay. We'll go to the next slide. So you can start testing this pretty easily. All you need is your long-term service release version of CVET or latest to current release versions. It needs to be used on a domain joined machine, and the PowerShell, Citrix PowerShell SDK, so the CLI for this, you can install it on the delivery controller itself, or you can install it on a device used to manage that. The install tool itself is a very easy, basic MSI installer, so you just click on it and you install it. So on the next slide, so there aren't many requisites here either. You need a valid Citrix Virtual Apps Desktop Service license, or one of the license groups in which it's contained. And we would recommend using this with 2 cloud connectors rather than 1, because then you have high availability, of course, should one of them fail. It can be even used with 1 cloud connector. So let's delve a little bit deeper in exporting an on-prem configuration. So in the next slide, once you install the auto configuration MSI tool, you can just run it as administrator. And then you have the dialog box in which you can put the commands. It's a very simple list of commands, which are also all available online. We will actually, in the next slide, we will see an overview of the commands there are. So there's no reason to make a screenshot of this. We have our website on auto configuration, which lists all of these in more detail. But as you can see, there's a few more options for a on-prem to cloud migration, because in on-prem to cloud migration, you have to configure a few more things. All right. So in the next slide, you can see the factors which you can use, the filtering options. So you can do a migration in stages. So you can, for example, choose to migrate certain delivery groups or certain applications, or you can choose to migrate certain policies. So you have a lot of control and visibility in that. All right. So then I'll go to my final slide. So basically, with the auto configuration tool, you can do a quick migration, and and it's easy to use. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Danilo. I did a little bit of testing on this already. So what you'll see here on the screen, and I'll get Gavin to press play now in a minute. What I did was I created a brand new empty tenant in cloud, and then I took my test DDC environment on-prem, and I just showed you how I could copy it in. It's super fast, but I think it's a nice little video to give you an understanding of how easy it is to use. So if you wouldn't mind pressing play there, Gavin. This is my on-prem studio, you'll see. Hopefully. There we go. So here we are. I have an empty CVAD account. So this is a tenant in cloud. Again, you could use this tool for, you know, merging and granularly changing policies from pre-prod to prod, etc. So if you have multiple tenants and you want to make sure they're all up to date, this is a great way of doing it. So I don't have a whole lot in my cloud tenant here. It's basically empty, standard zone, couple of cloud connectors. And what I've chosen to do here then, when I go back, you'll see I'll go back to my virtual apps and desktops on-prem. I've created some test applications. So you can see there's my test applications, etc. And I've also created some test policies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export using the commandlets Danilo has talked about. I export configuration from that on-prem CVAD farm, and I'm going to save it to those YAML files. Now these YAML files must be customized, and I've just popped the detail and the documentation for the POC guide in the chat for anyone who wants to look at it. You'll see we've got customer zone and security YAML files. This is how we get the autoconfig tool to talk to our cloud tenant. It also does a backup of these files as well. You pop in your client ID, your secret ID, and your customer ID as well. So it knows which tenant it's importing that information to when you decide to merge it. So that's just me showing you that I've got some policies on the on-prem. And also, just like magic, I'm showing you that I do not have anything in my application node inside of Citrix Cloud. So the next stage then will be to merge that configuration into my cloud tenant, which I then run as well. You can choose to merge individual components here. So you could just merge policies, you could just merge delivery groups. So you have a choice of what you merge, and you can do it slowly, as Danilo already mentioned. It also gives you a nice log that tells you exactly what happened, what did or did not work if you're testing it. And you can see in here straight away, application-wise, here are all the applications that were in my on-prem farm. And here's the policies that I also had in my on-prem farm, now delivered into my cloud service. So that's just a really super fast demo. As I said, that's now gone GA. The Shield or service continuity has also got a Podio form there, and that is in tech preview at the moment. So thanks from all of us in the technologist team. Gavin is also showing us his blog, which is a fantastic blog on our Citrix IE site, as well as this one here is from Citrix too. So check out those two different blogs for more information on those. So thanks from the technologist team in Dublin, and thanks for having us at the CUGC. I'll just check some questions.
Thanks, Wendy.
Are you still there?
Really,
yeah,
really
I was
good.
gonna say, are you still there?
No, a proper Citrix user group keynote with some PowerShell and demos and real life demos as well. So you saved me there, because they always nag me on that to say that we need more technology. So really appreciate the guys, and also just to mention that the technology specialist team is a team which is fast growing, immensely popular within Citrix, because you guys are doing a tremendous work on helping us with pre-sales, but also post-sales kind of configuration, and helping in areas which we come out short. So thanks for joining, and thanks for the great work you guys are doing. I'm sure you will engage with some of the Nordic folks here on the call during the course of the year.
Absolutely. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
All the best. Thank you.
Där ja, nej men vad bra. Kent, Gabbe, jag ser att ni är väl på också. Ska vi wrap upp? Ni får avsluta. Tack så mycket för att vi fick vara med både på morgonen och på kvällen. Och vad jag har förstått ett väldigt lyckat event med i alla fall mycket aktiviteter på chatten och i båset vad jag förstår. Så tack för idag.
Tack. Det var ingen ljud, Kent.
Nej, han mutade bara lite så.
Jag har fortfarande ingen ljud, Kent.
Det kan man se på ögonen som går så här. Vad är det som händer?
Exakt. Ja, vi får väl vänta till han får ljud helt enkelt. Så ska vi runda av och berätta lite om tävlingar och liknande.
Ja, men precis. Jag har ju sett det också. Det var ju...
Hur funkar det nu då?
Lite rundgång, men vad fan. Det är väl inget att ta.
Funkar det inte nu eller?
Jag mutar.
För att på min...
Jag tror det är Kent som har rundgång.
Hur är det nu då?
Ja, nu...
Hallå?
Nu är det bra.
Hur hörs det?
Ja, mer rundgång. Men det får vi bjuda på.
Jaha, okej. Konstigt. Ja. Hör du mig nu? Ja, bra. Ska vi innan vi avslutar det här då, ta och avsluta tävlingen, och så kommer Gabbe att presentera vinnaren på AW:n som vi ska starta och dra igång. Så att vad sa du, Gabbe? Ska vi ta och räkna ner?
Ja, om du räknar ner så tar jag en print screen.
Ja, gud, det ser ut som vi har. Men vi avslutar tävlingen här då om 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Och vi har en runner-up rejält alltså.
Ja, det är någon som har fuskat.
Precis, jag fattar inte ens hur man kan få så mycket poäng. Det får vi intervjua honom om sen. Men vi tar det på AW:n. Då avslutar vi den här sessionen då. Så bjuder vi in alla. Vi går alltså till lounge och sen till AW. Då kan vi, jag tror alla kan vara med på ljud och 16 kunde vara med på bild om jag kommer ihåg det rätt. Det får se om det funkar med 16 kameror, men det är en annan sak. Så att vi ses i AW:n alldeles strax.
Super. Och tack Peter och gänget från Citrix.
Exakt.